I'm here because we need my husband to be our president and commander-in-chief for 4 more years. He's what is best for our country.
Let's get some analysis now from Scott Lucas, who's a professor of international politics at Birmingham University in the UK. Welcome to the programme. We heard there from Melania Trump. Do you think that racial divisions have increased under President Donald Trump, or have they always been there, and is it unfair to blame Donald Trump?
Well, let's be clear. I mean, America has been a racially divided country since its founding in the 18th century. The background of slavery, segregation in my country, in my part of the country, in the South, after slavery was ended. As a boy, I grew up with it. And I grew up with, issues of police violence, issues of lynching, issues of injustice. And even though we've had the civil rights movement to make progress, it's a long road. And 50 years later, we're still having to travel that road. All that being said, Donald Trump has fed upon the racial issues, and he has exacerbated them. Melania Trump last night tried to, soften his image. All of a sudden, the Republicans were not shouting about extremist and anarchist and the left and talking about rat holes, African-American sections in cities. But that is what Donald Trump has done on a day-by-day basis, to the point where when you have white supremacists who have carried out violence, as they did in Charlottesville, and as it appears they did last night, because it appears it's a right-wing militia that shot and killed these 2 people and injured a 3rd. He says, all sides are involved here, and tries to excuse that. So no, it's really not in a week where the Trump convention, not the Republican convention, but the Trump convention has really declared almost a culture war in an attempt to get him a 2nd term in office. You don't get to excuse Donald Trump from trying to prey upon those racial issues that we need to deal with in the United States.
You say you don't get to excuse Donald Trump, but tell us a bit more about what we're seeing, these incredible images, the protests also following George Floyd's murder. How does this all play into the campaigning?
Well, first of all, before we get to campaigning, these are vital economic and social issues, not just police violence, but issues of housing, education, and healthcare. And they have to be dealt with. You can't wait 30 days for a report into Jacob Blake's death. You have to try to get accountability, or not death, but his serious wounding. You have to get accountability for what happened when he was shot 7 times, when he was getting in a car where he has 3 children there. You have to get accountability for what happened to George Floyd, or what happened to Breonna Taylor. And that type of accountability relies on a politics which is not of division, but having a discussion which is beyond Democrat and Republican, beyond right and left. Joe Biden last week tried to reach out and called for an America that moves to unity, that moves to the light rather than darkness. But in 2 nights of the Republican convention, what we have seen is the us versus them approach, which is, if you support Donald Trump, that's great. But if you raise these issues and you're not going to vote for him, we're going to tar you as being the enemy within. This campaign, in other words, worries me for 2 reasons. One is, there will be an attempt primarily from the Trump camp to further divide America. And secondly, if that succeeds, and if he gets a 2nd term in office, I do fear for the future of the country where I was born.
And there are 68 days to go before the presidential campaign. Now, do you think Joe Biden is the person to heal the racial divide in America?
I think it has to be a lot of people. Now, obviously, the president, as we're discussing, carries a great deal of responsibility. If Joe Biden wins the office, he'll be important. So will Kamala Harris as the first African-American, the first Asian-American vice president. So will all those who are elected into the Senate and House of Representatives, races we need to be looking at as well, and indeed at state and local level. In other words, we need to stop looking at these racial issues as being one man, one person, the spectacle of Donald Trump, or indeed a Joe Biden. It has got to be a grassroots movement which coincides with responsible and decent leadership.
Scott Lucas, we'll end there. Always a pleasure to get your analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.